Hello and welcome. I'm Alex MacDonald, your host, and I'm a young professional in the field of international security. Been living in The Hague for almost 2 years now. I initially came to study a master's degree at Leiden University. Today's episode of Expaterience, we're going to be exploring some of the issues and challenges that expats face as they're integrating into the community in The Hague. The Hague is, of course, a prime destination for expats internationally. It's known as the City of Peace and Justice. There are many embassies here, there are international organizations, large-scale events such as the upcoming NATO summit. And it therefore attracts a wealth of people from all sorts of backgrounds and all walks of life. However, having such a rich mix of people can potentially introduce tensions or even misunderstandings between expats and locals here in The Hague. And that is why I think that this topic of discussion today is so important. I'm delighted to say that I've got a fantastic panel of guests with me to discuss this today. I'm very much looking forward to an insightful discussion. But before all of that, here's the news with Nicoletta.
Thank you, Alex. Welcome to Expaterience News, with the latest and most important news for internationals. NATO has unveiled the agenda for its 2025 summit in The Hague, where alliance leaders will gather at the World Forum this upcoming Tuesday, June 24th, and Wednesday, June 25th, to address international security challenges and global developments. On Tuesday, the NATO Defense Industry Forum will take place. Tuesday evening includes working dinners for both the NATO-Ukraine Council and the North Atlantic Council. King Willem Alexander and Queen Maxima will host an informal dinner for heads of state and government, joined by leaders from key NATO partners and EU institutions. The main summit session, the North Atlantic Council, at the leaders level, will take place on Wednesday. The Dutch defense will deploy over 10,000 military personnel, reservists, and staff across the country. This large-scale operation, named Operation Orange Shield, includes both military support and police tasks carried out by the Royal Netherlands Marechaussee. Given global tensions and the presence of high-profile dignitaries, it is one of the largest security efforts in Dutch history. The estimated cost for the NATO summit is over 183 million euros. The NATO summit will impact the traffic in the Hague area. From tomorrow afternoon, Sunday, June 22nd to Thursday, June 26th, motorists should prepare for significant traffic disruptions in and around The Hague, Amsterdam and Rotterdam. Due to temporary, partial or even full closures of highways, on and off ramps, viaducts and tunnels, particularly along the A4, N44, A44 and A5, drivers may experience major delays. Main traffic corridor Johan de Wittlaan was already fully closed and will remain closed until August. For the most up-to-date information and details on local road closures, residents are advised to check their municipal websites. Train services will operate on a regular schedule during the NATO summit, but trains may be more crowded than usual. In The Hague, tram and bus passengers are encouraged to consult HTM for the latest updates on public transport routes in the city. Talking about national affairs, the far-right PVV party, led by the Geert Wilders, triggered the collapse of the Dutch coalition government on 3rd June by pulling out over failed asylum policy demands, specifically a 10-point plan including deportations and border closures. Prime Minister Dick Schoof resigned. The ministries are continuing in a caretaker role until new elections to be held on October 29th. Housing shortages, families living in precarious conditions, and the uncertainty over social support measures highlight the real-world impact of this political crisis. Meanwhile, political leaders are planning their strategies for the election campaign, searching for alliances that actually are far from guaranteed. For example, the VVD leader labeled Wilders as an incredibly unreliable partner, and the possibility that the two parties will tie the knot seems far. According to a report published by CBS Statistics Netherlands on Wednesday, based on IND data, in 2024 the Netherlands made 8,000 transfer requests to other countries under the Dublin regulation, aiming to send asylum seekers to the country responsible for handling their applications. In the same year, the Netherlands received over 5,000 similar requests from other countries. According to Statistics Netherlands, more than 2,200 asylum seekers were transferred from the Netherlands to other countries, while nearly 1,200 were transferred to the Netherlands. Most came from Germany. The Dublin regulation determines which country is responsible for processing an asylum application. A country may ask another to take over an asylum seeker if, for example, the person first applied for asylum there, entered the EU through that country, or has family members there who have applied for or have been granted asylum. Taking advantage of the summer holidays, some expats may want to travel to their home countries as well as touring abroad. In any case, following the outbreak of the conflict between Israel and Iran, it is important for travelers to check the latest information on security in the Middle East on the website of the Dutch government and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Instead, if at the moment you are in Iran or Israel, please consult the travel advice for each country for detailed information and guidance on what to do. Also register with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Information Service. Indeed, military clashes between Iran and Israel have created an unpredictable security situation across the Middle East. For example, the travel advisory color code for the Jordanian border regions with Syria and Iraq is orange, meaning travel is only advised if necessary. These areas are not safe for tourism at the moment. For the rest of Jordan, the travel advisory is yellow, so travelers should remain cautious due to specific security risk. The security situation in Israel remains highly unpredictable and dangerous. As of last Friday, June 13th, the travel advisory for the entire country has been raised to red. There is a high risk of attacks across the country. Under all circumstances, travel to Israel is strongly discouraged due to the serious dangers. The travel advisory for Iraq is marked red as well because of the same level of danger and risk. And that's all for now. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you very much, Nicoletta. So, now for a brief round of introductions for my lovely panel that I have here today. Please tell us your name, what you do, and how many years or how long you've been living in the Netherlands. We'll start, please, with Sarah here and go clockwise around the table.
Yeah, of course. My name is Sarah. Currently, I work as an account manager at the Hague International Center. And boy, how long have I been in the Netherlands? I think the majority of my life I've spent here, but there have been periods in between where I went abroad to study and where I followed my family when my father worked abroad. So a little bit here and there, yeah.
Great.
Thank you for inviting me. My name is Daria Lysenko. I originally come from Ukraine, and I'm a writer, a poet, and I write in Croatian and Ukrainian. And I have published 2 books, and I'm a member of Croatian Writers Association, and also I'm an cultural manager and art historian. I've been here for already 3 years in The Hague, and yeah, that's
Thank you.
it.
Good morning. Yes, my name is Deborah Valentine, originally Canadian, but with some background from other cultures and countries. Moved every 4 years until the age of 40, and this has now been home, so now I just move the furniture. I'm the director of Access.
Thank you.
My name is Begimay. I'm coming from Kyrgyzstan, Bishkek. It's a Central Asian region. I've been living here for 9 years almost. So I moved here when I was 22, which was quite challenging. So at the moment, I'm working in communication, in public affairs, in international sector.
Thank you very much. Well, that's a great mix of backgrounds, and I'm sure this is going to make for a lively discussion, which aims to be free-flowing, so please do jump in at any point and pick up on points made around the table as you wish. So I'd like to kick off our discussion now with a little piece of data. In a 2024 Expat Insider survey for the Netherlands done by Internations, expats were asked across 53 cities across the world to rank each city on a range of different criteria. And what was interesting is that as it pertains to The Hague, it scored highest on job satisfaction and career prospects. In fact, it was in the top 10 of that global survey, together with Amsterdam in those categories. However, it scored lower in categories of finding friends and connecting with Dutch locals. these are really important factors for the theme of the discussion today around Expaterience, which is building a sense of community. Indeed, only around half of respondents in this survey in The Hague said that their friends and acquaintances were mostly expats. So half of them saying that actually they don't really mix much with Dutch people. So I'm curious, how does, with this in mind, this data chime with your personal experiences or observations with people you might be supporting? Deborah, perhaps you could kick off the discussion for us.
Sure. I coincidentally just wrote an article about this topic. When I first moved here, I was married to a Dutchman, and so I assumed I needed lots of Dutch friends, even though I'd grown up moving around the world. And so I invested in making Dutch friends. After about a year and a half, I realized that wasn't going to work for me. And I think what I learned along the way was I needed to learn more about the Dutch and understand how they organize, how they've met, how their groups formed. And what was good at the beginning, the curiosity, I was the new bride, I was from somewhere else. That curiosity wore off after about a year, and the onus was then on me to discover a little bit more about the Dutch and to realize that it was more difficult to penetrate those groups. And so you have to sort of take a back seat, find people who are Dutch, who have something similar to you to build from. Because once you've got that, so my Dutch friends now have international experience, and from there, we've built more connections with other Dutch people. So it's a little bit, the onus is on us as internationals to do a little bit more research and understand and be creative in, finding sports that you enjoy together and asking, can we play a game of tennis? Or, oh, you're going for a run, and trying to slowly integrate with their habits.
Right. Thank you very much. Would you say, though, that this is something that's changed a lot in the past? Because this is a 2024 survey. You've been with Access now, I believe, since 2011. So I was just wondering if
Thanks
you could
for reminding me.
reflect that. Do you think these findings would find similar results back then, or do you think there are things that have recently exacerbated this?
I wouldn't say that those things have recently exacerbated, but what has changed is, of course, the cities throughout the Netherlands have become more international. So there are more internationals living in the city. So on the one hand, it's easier to make friends with internationals because there's more living next to you, there's more that you're working with, there's more that you bump into when you go shopping, whatever.
Right.
But so that's changed. And so I find that I give advice to people about how the Dutch are, generally speaking. But what I realize and what's pointed out to me is, for instance, meeting the Dutch. How do you meet them when you've moved in somewhere? I always tell people, once you're settled, put a note under the door and invite people over for a drink. And somebody commented to me and said, all my neighbors are internationals. I was like, oh, okay. So it's changing from that point of view. But I do think there's always value to investigating and to knowing about the culture that you're living in.
Right. What about anyone else? Does anyone else have any thoughts on some of the reasons or factors behind these findings in the survey?
Yeah, definitely. So as an account manager with the International Center, we're in contact with a lot of the neighborhood associations. And what we see more and more is that building bridges and meeting other internationals is becoming a topic with the local Dutch population as well. I think that perhaps many years ago was a bit different because there would only be a few internationals, and now they're everywhere. They're your neighbors, it's the parents of the kids that your kids play with. So what I see is that there's a desire to build that bridge from the other side nowadays, which is really lovely.
That's true. Yeah.
What makes it hard, on the other hand, is that because there's so many internationals, it's easy to stay in your own group because there's so many people who are from the same background or who share a language, and it can make it a little bit more difficult to connect with the Dutch.
I think, sorry to interrupt, I think a challenge on that as well is we all have the tendency to say expats and assume that they have one characteristic. But there's huge diversity in the international population in terms of language, in terms of background, age, where they work. So the diversity is immense. And I think sometimes in the Dutch media and Dutch people still think of it as one group. And so the challenge is also, the foods are different, the cultures are different, the holidays are, everything's different. The diversity is immense. And I think that can be challenging to communicate that and to individuals and make them understand that it's not the expat, it's actually somebody from Ukraine or somebody from Germany and all of the differences that sorry, I forgot where you're from. Kyrgyzstan. I would have said it as well.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I was listening to you now and I'm thinking, okay, but the expat, who is actually this expat? Am I an expat? So because in my case, I came here because of the war, as I said, and I didn't actually have this problem with the community and friends. I moved before, so I lived a long time in Croatia and Serbia, so I have like a previous experience on living abroad. But this time is like totally different. So it's not because of work or studies, it's because of the war. Yeah. And when I first came here, it was like from day one, this big community of Ukrainians across the globe, and also people, in my case, the Dutch, who were supporting the Ukrainians. And so it was the first time in my life that I felt that community across the globe. Can you imagine this support, that you can feel that the whole world supports you? And it was so heartwarming. And from day one, I had this new community. We did a lot to contribute, to help. And that's how I actually met my new friends here. So it was super easy in that regard, because it's not because I was like looking for friends or connections, it's because we were doing the same thing. And my like closest friends come from the foundation Vataha, where I am a volunteer still. And we are promoting Ukrainian culture, doing all kinds of events, and like we are working on, I don't know, for instance, now we are working on Run for Ukraine in The Hague. So thousands of people, expats like Dutch people, Ukrainians, just people, who are the expats. So everyone is coming to run for Ukraine, to support Ukraine. And that's how you form actually the community. I totally agree with your point that you have to be active. So yes, maybe you don't have this background as me, but you can be the active one, creating your own circle. And the best approach is to be a volunteer. Maybe you're into art. So my first step here after this that I just explained was to be an art curator, so a volunteer actually in the Dedel Museum here in The Hague, and I made an exhibition with a great team of volunteers. So maybe you're also interested in something that moves you, and that's a perfect way to find the people, like-minded people. Yes.
Agreed.
Yes.
Ukraine was an interesting situation for the Netherlands, and a huge debates in the Netherlands. So regardless of the international community, it was one of the first communities. Don't forget, there were many refugees who came from many parts of the world before.
Yes.
But the Ukrainians were the first that the Dutch openly, actively embraced. Really welcome. So it's nice to hear that when you meet halfway, it works. And it proves also there's so many other communities that were not welcomed in that way.
Yes,
and they are not the ones, and they are the ones who are having more difficulty finding community, and play a role in politics today. But it makes a point, is that when you meet halfway, the growth is tremendous. But there's the halfway point. There's both sides have to move, so it's not just
to add up on this point, because it's really important. So there are places like, for instance, Verhalenhuis Belvedere in Rotterdam that are community centers for all the people who search for a community. And for
Yeah.
instance, for Hallam House Belvedere is the one who gathers different communities from different cultures and backgrounds every day, makes events. So those places exist in Netherlands because I think Dutch are already kind of aware about this, like, let's say, problem.
Yeah, the challenge.
Challenge, yes, that's a better word. Yeah.
I want to ask as well specifically about, and it was a really important point you're making, how there are all sorts of different subcategories, if you will, within this broad term expat. One of them, of course, is people who come here to study and students, something I've done, but also I believe this was how you first came to the Netherlands. Exactly. So could you tell us also just a bit about that in that context of you coming first as a student, but then also about your experiences of community in The Hague?
When I came first as a student, I have received lots of support from the university, and also university assigns you a kind of Dutch body to help you to integrate, and that was great. But I have a little bit of a different story in terms of once I arrived here. On my third day, I was cycling and I fell off the bike. Turned out I had some kind of infection. That they found out later in the ambulance, and so ambulance arrived, all people gathered within 2 minutes, and I just felt scared and insecure because I was in a new country. I didn't know anyone, like literally no one, and I got accepted to the ambulance and to the emergency room, and everyone was so extremely welcoming. They were like so empathetic. They were asking me questions, they were trying to talk to me, they were like comforting me. And that's I found this a wonderful experience in terms of I'm a student and I don't have anyone here. I don't have my family and no friends, and all of a sudden I have people who not only perform their job but also being very human to human contact. And that's still something that amazes me, that I walk out and then you see people who, for example, clean the streets, or you see drivers, or you see your local shop and they say, "Hi, how are you?" So I find that to this day extremely wonderful. But on the other hand, I agree with your point that to enter Dutch circle is hard, because I find that people form those connections in their primary schools or in their high schools, and those goes for years. And in my experience, I don't think people are so easy to accept new people. But on the other hand, it's also, I think, for people hard. For example, I mostly meet Dutch people through dating, and yes, I had one date, and I was told like, "Oh, all those internationals, they're so problematic. They have million problems." And I was like, yes, I agree, because you come here and then you have to think about your visa as a student. You have to apply to orientation year. You have to discover all these policies in Dutch, and then you have to find a job and an interview and submit a language, and then you have to find a housing and a friend, and then you don't have a family. And I find that so difficult, especially as a young person, once you finish university and then you have like this whole world around you. And for example, for me, I didn't know if I want to go back, I didn't know if I want to stay, I didn't know what I want to do. And all of a sudden you have to deal with all those problems, and you don't have your family to just knock and say like, "Hey, can you help me?" And also your family and friends back home, they don't understand the challenges you go through. And Dutch community or Dutch people, they are also not aware of these things. So I found myself, of course, I had support and I had kind people around me, but at one point I found myself extremely lonely, especially, as I said, once you finish university, and then you haven't started your career, you're a young adult, and you have this wave of feelings and challenges. So that's that's the challenge.
Definitely. But have you done any activities, though, maybe outside your regular job to actually, you've mentioned socially, but other things that have really given you a sense of community? Or how have you thought about the process of gaining a sense of community, either through the diaspora or just through other means?
Currently I call Netherlands my European hometown. So that's somewhere I'm settled and I have friends and I feel like home here. And one of the things that helped me tremendously is learning the language. Unfortunately, I don't use it every day at the moment. And it's also funny that you don't really need to speak Dutch in order to live in the Netherlands. But once I started to learn and practice language, it gave me so much sense of community. In order, even for example, we have a NATO summit, of course, now, and there are like lots of international organizations. So I was walking on the street, and there was a lady, elderly lady. She was from the neighborhood, so she was looking around and all those buildings and all those different international troops. And she was asking questions, of course, she was curious. And at one point she comes to me to ask questions, and then she was like, "Oh, you don't speak Dutch, right?" So she was kind of so disappointed. And I was like, "No, I actually do." And I saw she was relieved and she was so happy. Yeah. And then we started a discussion in Dutch, and then she told me like all her problems and all her challenges, what she goes through. And I thought that's amazing, because she felt, I felt connected to her, and I felt like she was connected to me, as if she didn't see me as the other one, or is that like expat or this person. So I find learning Dutch language was an amazing experience for me.
Do we all agree with that, by the way, that learning the Dutch language is important? Or not only important, but is it also fair to have local Dutch people expect expats or people coming internationally to quickly learn the language, given the business language of business often is English. A lot of university courses are taught as English. So what do we think about that language point?
Sorry, I'm going to jump in. There's two questions, and the second one's a tough one. The first one, I think learning a language when you arrive in a country is absolutely something everybody should do.
Very great.
Some languages are more difficult than others. Some you use them more often than others. One of the challenges to learning the language in this country is that the Dutch, out of the kindness of their heart, and because they believe their language is so difficult, the moment you struggle, will switch to English. And so then the onus is back on the person learning, which is mediated by culture and where you come from and your age and all of these things, to say, "Sorry, I'm learning Dutch. Could we please continue?" So, yes, it's important, but I think more Dutch can help as well. They are trying to help. It comes from the right place, but it just lands incorrectly. The other question, however, is a lot more weighted. And The Hague is a little bit different to other parts of the country because we have so many people here who are only here for 2 to 3 years. Dutch is not a language that travels well. You know, if you learn Spanish, you can speak it in so many countries. If you learn French, you can speak it in so... There's not a lot of places you can speak Dutch. So if you're only here for 2 or 3 years, I understand the hesitancy to not bother. And also if everybody's going to speak English to you. But for the international companies and organizations, it is a challenge because you're not using it at work. Yeah. So when do you practice it? But to the expectation that everybody should, I think, misses a few nuances in the community.
I would agree with that, but I do... No, I absolutely think that's true. If you're only here for a temporary stay, then of course learning Dutch, it's a lot of effort, versus if you are studying here, for instance, and you know you would perhaps like to build a career here or stay here, I would definitely say learning Dutch is essential. Yeah. It makes your life tremendously, a lot easier than it would be without the language skill, even if you don't use it in a work setting. And I think it's a nice way to connect with the locals, and you know, you do learn more about the Dutch by learning their language, I think.
Can I make a point about Dutch, learning Dutch language? I also feel this is quite a privilege because Dutch schools are extremely expensive and the waiting line is huge. So if you want to sign up for a class, you have to be ready to pay quite a lot of money for it. also your time if you work, efforts, and you have to wait and in order to fit in the schedule. So I also find it it's quite a privilege to be able to learn that. It's not so easy.
Yeah. That changes from city to city, the prices and what's available and what's not available. So we have to keep that in mind. Some cities are making an awful lot of effort to share those skills. And I think one of the initiatives that we've seen, as you said, I've been with Access for a while, thank you. One of the differences I've noticed over time is if we go look back at our data, we collect information about the number of questions we get about certain topics. And if we look at the number of people who asked questions at Access about language learning 10 years ago, it was very small. Of course, inburgering has changed. A lot of other things have changed as well. But the number of people inquiring about not only language lessons, but taalcafés, so where they can go practice, has increased exponentially. So people are realizing that language is necessary, and they are looking for ways to learn or to practice or to use it. So I think that there is an acknowledgement in the international community, which is very broad and diverse, that language has to be learned. It's the meeting the halfway and the costing, as you say, which varies per city. And, you know, different rules and regulations, whether you're a kennismigrant or a refugee or, I mean, anybody who can figure that out, well done. So it is changed. But the international community itself is working that. They realize that language is critical.
Right.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I would like to add upon the temporary. So I'm a person who has the temporary protection. So I'm the temporary person. And still, I think even if you're temporary here for any reason, you should learn Dutch. Why? Because it's an investment that, I mean, if you're even living then in another country in a couple of years, it's something good for your development as a person also. But you're living here right now, and in order to break this wall with the locals, you should be able to speak Dutch. So right now I'm, for instance, on B1 level. That's not fair in comparison with other Ukrainians because I already knew German. Yeah. So it's easier for me. But nevertheless, it was actually for me a game changer. When I started to speak Dutch effectively, for me it was again through volunteering. I was in the Boymans depot showing around like little guided tours, and most of visitors are Dutch. And so I understood, okay, that would be better like if I show them around in their native language and not in English. And it was a total game changer. So I've met thousands of people because there are about 2,000 people like each day, like visitors. And everyone is interested in some part of art. And I just started like talking, and people are like interested then, more interested than if you are speaking English with them. And I was actually so interested in that change because it's different than if you speak it just in English. Yeah. And I've received some weird also comments at first, like for like an example, two women were like talking Dutch with me for a long time, and then at that museum, and then said like, you see, the Ukrainian already knows Dutch, and my daughter-in-law lives here for 20 years and still doesn't. So I feel that, I mean, it is a like compliment because I understand that the Dutch kind of don't expect of Ukrainians to like be part of their society of something that quick at least. But I want to show them that we have a lot of like willness and talents, and we can do that. Yeah, and that should be treated also with respect, as you said. When we struggle with our Dutch, they switch into English immediately, and this is also kind of question how can we change that.
Yeah.
So I just proceed in Dutch. So
Which is a very Dutch way, very direct. Get to the point. Don't worry about being polite about it. Just say so. No. We're speaking Dutch.
Yes.
I use an English word, so what? We're speaking Dutch.
Yeah. So
But not everybody has.
Yeah, you have to, overcome that.
Yeah.
That's true. And don't want to brag, but I won. I just published a book. It came out of the publishing house called Woordenblik. And it's written in Ukrainian and translated into Dutch. So, and it was, so if you open the book, one poem, so you have the original and the Dutch translation on the other side. And I receive a lot of questions right now, like, why not in English? And I said that because I want to build this cultural connection with the Dutch community. And so it says, ik hoor dat je in Nederland bent. So I heard you are in the Netherlands. That's the comment that, the message actually, that I've received when I first came here. And a lot of my friends, they were, oh, I heard you're in the Netherlands. Yeah. Like, why?
What's it like?
What is it like? Like, why have you chosen Netherlands in the first place? My family actually were, when the war started, they were here at the moment. Though that's why I came to them. But nevertheless, I still have to translate sometimes so my poems into English because not everyone knows Dutch. Yeah. But my wish was to build this bridge with the Dutch audience and to show this kind of like a diary about how is it to be a Ukrainian in the Netherlands throughout those 3 years. Yeah. And I'm not writing about like my fate or something like that. I'm writing about the stereotypes, like what Dutch think about Ukrainians and what Ukrainians think about Dutch. And even those funny moments or some kinds of so challenges in those cultural misunderstandings. Mm-hmm. So I'm really interested in this topic that we have here because the thing that I'm leading to are also the stereotypes. Yeah. So when we say expat, it's kind of an euphemism, like that's good. Great. You're an expat, but then.
No, not necessarily good.
Not necessarily,
it's just incorrect.
But that's a second step of the discussion because which expat from where?
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I mean, there's a history of the word expat. You know, expatriate, somebody who's left their home country, and then it was sort of morphed into a very elite benefits. You know, relocation packages and extra funding for the school and blah 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 blah. That has changed so much in the last 20 years that the term no longer is applicable. So at Access, we actually don't even use the word expat. We use internationals. Yeah. And it covers, basically, you weren't born here. That's sort of all it is. And the rest is you're just from another country, another language. So the term expat is very laden and not always correct.
And it's important you've mentioned Access because it's been really interesting to hear some of these personal stories, but I also was wanting to turn a bit to the maybe broader infrastructure of support, community building organisations, civil society, government. So I'd really like to know a bit more about Access, but also the Hague International Centre. Sarah, perhaps you could start and give us a bit of an overview about what the Hague International Centre does and how it might support expats to get involved in their community.
So The Hague, of course, is the international city of peace and justice. We have so many international organizations, embassies, the consulates. There is a lot of expats, or as we say now, internationals in the city. And the municipality is playing into that by having this international center. So on the one hand, we help, of course, with all the relocation formalities, things that have to do with immigration, finding a house, registering, getting your BSN, all of the administrative stuff. But what we are focusing on more and more nowadays is the soft landing, and particularly making sure that people not only have the have-to-knows, but also the want-to-knows. So where can I find new friends? Where can I go to practice my Dutch? Where can I, play foosball with my friends, my new friends? And I think that's really important, work that we do. And it's, of course, a collaboration. We work closely with Access.
Right.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit more about Access, please.
Access were about 39 years old. Started in the international community through the American School in Wassenaar. Identified, a psychologist realized that the international community, not just the students, but particularly the accompanying partners, so at the time majority wives, some husbands, but majority wives, didn't know where to go, where to find answers. And so the model that was set up had two legs. One is preventative and the other was curative support. The curative support is we have an on-call counseling network that people can call whenever they like for a referral to support that they might need, be it language, location, or specialization. And the preventative is what you were talking about, volunteering, having people come to volunteer. And our volunteers run the organization, but most importantly, they answer the questions. So we work with the City of The Hague, Amsterdam, Utrecht, and Gemeente Amstelveen. And we have our back office as well. And whatever question you have, really, whatever question you have. Truly. And there have been some really interesting questions and some very difficult questions as well. But what we've noticed over the course of the years, much of the time, half of our work is nodding.
Emotional support. It's a lot of emotional support,
when somebody comes with a question and they look at somebody and they go, oh, they understand my question. Oh, they're saying, yeah, that happened to me. And they're like, oh, well.
And if I can interrupt, I think one of the beautiful things about the volunteers from Access is that they can often anticipate. A lot of the time when you're an international newcomer, everything is confusing. Yeah. Where do I start? Where do I go? What do I do? But you also don't always know what questions to ask because you don't know what you don't know. Yeah. And we see that a lot of the times the volunteers from Access, they'll ask extra questions or they'll tell extra information that they know will become relevant or is relevant in some way.
To the question, yeah. And
exactly.
An example I use is, we have people coming from certain countries who ask us for the name of a pediatrician. And you're like, oh, you don't understand the healthcare system here.
Let me explain.
So you explain the healthcare system. You said, I can give you the name of a pediatrician, but you're not going to get an appointment. It won't be covered by insurance. And, so just go to your GP. That's where the system works. So, anticipating. And so half of our work and the value of our work is just going, yes, I know. And then like, oh. I'm not alone.
Can I ask, is it more that people come to you for legal support, or is it more like Kennis Matschapai?
No. It's just So we don't solve anybody's problems. We tell them where to go. Mm-hmm. So, for instance, if people have a legal issue, we always give people 3 options. We might have partners who help fund our organization, so we'll start with them, but we also always refer to you to just look at. So we're not telling people what to do, but we're telling them where to find the answers. Because as Sarah pointed out, a lot of the time is you just don't know where to start. Like, where do I go?
That's something I was struggling with because when I was doing my inburgering test, there was this section, Kennis Matschapai. It's basically knowledge of Dutch society, and I find it so confusing. Yeah. Because of course you have a book.
So do the Dutch sometimes.
Yeah,
exactly. I help somebody practice, and there's questions that I don't even know the answer to.
Right, and then you don't have a person to ask those questions. So, for example, there would be a question that I remember from my test. It says, "Oh, your neighbor decided to do euthanasia. So, what are your options?" And then you sit and think like, oh my God, what are my options? Exactly. What is the right answer here to do? And I never found out the right answer for this question.
You can have a whole other program about that. But a lot of the questions in the inburgering, as Sarah pointed out, I've had a lot of conversations with Dutch people, and they're like, I have no idea what they're trying to find out.
About this in my life.
And they don't know. So but that's another program.
Yes. Well, we'll have to have another program because even, can you believe it, we're running short on time a little bit already. So I did want to actually get on to asking each of you if you did have a piece of advice for newcomers, if they were coming to The Hague today. They're trying to integrate into the community as best they can. What advice would you give someone who's just moving to the Netherlands, please?
I would say don't be scared. So, because when I first arrived here, I spent a few days staying home. So I locked in my room and I was scared to go out and I was just frozen. And maybe that's a natural response, but yeah, back then I would say to myself, please don't be scared, go out, talk to your neighbors, talk to people, they're all friendly and they're all nice, and most of people in the Netherlands, they wish you well.
Yeah.
You know, and that's one of the beautiful things here.
I would say, so two main points. One would be to meet your neighbors, the people who are closest to you. They may not become your best friends, but they will water your plants when you go away. They'll look after the cat or the dog. There might be babysitter, whatever. So getting to know your neighbors. In the Dutch way, settle first. I come from a country where you move somewhere and everybody shows up with a casserole. That won't happen here. So you settle and then you invite people in, generally speaking. And the other is, especially if you're not working, what you've mentioned and others have mentioned, volunteering.
That was going to be my answer.
Sorry.
You're stealing my answer now.
I am the director of a volunteer organization. But it gives you a chance, as you say, to either practice language skills, meet other people, discover things that you might have in common with others.
Definitely.
I would advise to be prepared to learn the language, so the Dutch language. Don't like delay it. Like just jump into the class, and those students in that class will be your first friends. Actually,
Right.
You will go to coffees, and that's a great way to start the integration. And the other thing is be active. So do what you like to do.
Yeah.
And you will also find your circle.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was going to say volunteering, but I'm going to change my answer to nee heb je, ja kun je krijgen.
Yes,
Which is actually Dutch for you always have a no if you don't ask, and you can get a yes if you do ask. Playing into this, all of our answers, I think.
Yeah.
The Dutch and the internationals who live here, at the core of everybody's heart, you know, people are welcoming, are friendly, they want to connect with other people. And the Dutch are, yes, a little bit cold sometimes. And what I would always say is try and reach out, make these connections. And if you're not asking for something, you'll never get it. So if you want to make a new friend and go out for coffee, ask. If you want to join a football club, ask. If you want to go on a walk with your neighborhood moms and take the kids to the playground, just ask. And most of the time, people are willing and are happy to say yes. And it's these small interactions and these little things of, you know, practicing Dutch with the neighbor or, you know, having a coffee after the football game that really end up making a difference, I think, in my opinion.
Can I add?
Yes, of course.
I would also say that be open-minded, because it's so easy to come to a Dutch group, and for example, for me, food is super important. And it's my
love language.
It's my love language. It's my boundary. And then I see, for example, my friends having the same bread and cheese for lunch every day, and my first reaction would be like,
Terrible.
"Oh my God,
What are they?
why?" But on the other hand,
Be open-minded.
Exactly.
It's very healthy, it's fast, it's a cheap.
There are different cheeses, you know.
Exactly. Who am I to come
Learn
and say like this is wrong?
But picking up quickly as well on that point of you're saying just ask. But does that put the onus a lot on the expat then? Because if I'm just moving to a new neighborhood, maybe I'm given the keys by the landlord, I'm told where the Albert Heijn is, here's where you take out the recycling. But is there enough there that's kind of given to you, perhaps by the municipality, for example?
I think in a sense there is enough that is given to you. I think there's quite a lot of organizations and of course the government as well that do their best to facilitate, having all the knowledge and having everything at your fingertips. One of the beautiful things about Access and about the International Center, for instance, is you always have a point where you can go to ask. So you will always be able to find whatever you are looking for, in a sense.
But it does put the onus on the individual.
A little
It
bit,
does,
for sure.
And that'll be mediated by culture and that person's character and
Right.
so on. I had one little quick thing, but I know
ahead, please.
No, and this is a reminder to what my current flagship is. A lot of people say that the Dutch are rude. And my response to them is, no, the Dutch are very direct.
Yes.
In translation.
But I think, when you learn Dutch.
But you learn the directness, but then when you translate it to English,
Yes.
you're not using all the words that we use in English to ask a question.
Right.
Would you please help me find, there's like, where is?
That's true.
So they are direct it's the culture, it's the language, it's the personality, and then when they translate it into English, it comes across as rude. So I say, keep the smile on your face, and until you ask the question, you don't have an answer. So ask.
But maybe this is also the importance of Dutch again, because it helps you bridge that cultural misunderstanding where you think, oh, these people are so
Maybe
rude.
that's why they're not speaking. They think they're being rude.
But once you learn a little bit more Dutch, you maybe understand the nuance of the language, and you realize, wait a second, in Dutch, this is very polite and a normal way of speaking. It just translates horribly.
Yeah.
And now you sound like I don't know if we concur.
Well, on that note, I have to say thank you all very much indeed for a fascinating discussion and for all of your contributions, as well as the helpful insights, of course, at the end. For now, we have some light relief. Pleased to hand over to Anupama for a stand-up routine. Please take it away.
Hi, everyone. Or as we internationals say now, hoi. Am I doing this right? So I think nothing connects Dutch and expats more than the shared confusion over the word gezellig. What exactly is it? Is it a vibe? Is it a sound? Is it a religion? Should I bow when I say it? I don't know what exactly it is. So I think connecting with Dutch is very easy for an expat. All you have to do is master a language where every other word sounds like you're coughing up IKEA furniture. One at a time, right from the epiglottis, okay? I got to learn Dutch, got as far as lekker. Now I use it everywhere. You know, lekker dog, lekker taxes, lekker depression. Works every time. So I think you haven't really connected into Dutch until you have nearly murdered by a silent bicycle. You know, no bell, no warning, just a whoosh. And it's like, then a glare. Oh my God, like you personally delayed his entire life. And seriously, once I said sorry to a guy for him hitting me. This is how Dutch biking works. He flew past me and he said something in Dutch, maybe a threat or a sandwich recipe. I don't know. I don't even want to know, in fact. Once I invited to a Dutch birthday party, and the one thing they made me do is shake everybody's hand, including the goldfish. Yeah, I mean, they call it a circle party, and I call it a social hostage situation. You know? Yeah, you sit in a circle, sip lukewarm coffee, and every 10 minutes, someone will ask you, so, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm rethinking all my life choices, Pete. This is what I do. Yeah, I think I'm still here. I don't eat meat. I don't drink alcohol, and I'm still surviving a country where every celebration involves something deep fried beyond recognition, meat and a beer the size of your regret. I mean, bigger is happy, huh? So, regrets, literally. And I think you haven't suffered enough until you're holding a paper plate full of lettuce, and then some Jan will say, oh, so you don't eat meat? Not even chicken. But chicken is like tofu of birds. And I'm like, you know what? That's why I hate tofu. What is tofu? It's a distant cousin of real cheese that has never been invited to a family party, in fact. And it's not it. There is a licorice. Something called licorice. Oh my goodness. I took one bite and my soul tries to file a complaint. Literally. What is it? And not everything is so bad. There are good things also. There is a stroopwafel. Yeah? That's a diplomacy dessert. You know, one bite of it, and I was like, you know what? Colonial history aside, I forgive you. See? Yeah. People ask me, do you feel integrated here? I said, yeah, I feel well integrated. I pay taxes. I pretend enjoying rain. Yeah. I judge people who put ketchup on fries. I am full-on integrated. Yeah. Once I offered to my work colleague chai. You know the real Indian tea? Indian chai with cardamom, ginger, and the tears of our ancestors. Yeah, the good stuff. Yeah. He took one sip and he was like, oh, so it is like, that's a perfume. I said, no, it's a flavor. He said, no, that's an emotional damage in liquid form. I was like, okay, then he pulls up a tea bag, just plain black tea. No milk, no sugar, no soul. And he said, this is how we do it here. This is how we do it here. Simple and efficient, like an Excel file, not a drink. And I was so irritated. I said, excuse me, this is not your corporate webinar. Pull down the spreadsheet and pay attention. This is a chai. I didn't boil it for 20 minutes just to get expression. Just to get response colder than my boss's sense of humor. And even twice as disappointing. Literally. And now let's talk about the love language. I think, and this is my personal opinion, I think Dutch is the only language where I love you sounds like you're setting up boundaries. You know, you say, ik hou van jou. To me, it sounds less like, romantic confession or some deep feelings. To me, it's more like, I love you, but keep distance. I just don't feel like I'm just saying my romantic feelings. To me, it's like, okay, but back off. All right? Yeah, it's something like that. So, you know what? I shifted to Netherlands in winters. So it was end of November, and I saw this man dressed in red giving up gifts to children. I said, wow, Santa made it to the Netherlands. Globalization wins. Yay! But then somebody told me it's not Santa. It's Sinterklaas. I just have a hold on my enthusiasm, and then I said, okay, Dutch Santa, yeah. But then he told me, no, he's not Dutch. He's from Spain. He has a horse, and he came here on a steamboat. And I just smiled politely, and I said, okay, so a Spanish man from Spain with a horse on a steamboat distributing gifts to Dutch children in winters. All right, let's go with that. My NS rail still got delayed, but yeah, okay, it's fine. I just smile and adopt, and I was just hoping nobody back home asking me to explain this, because the moment I said a horse on a boat from Spain, my mom is gonna say, you need to come home. Like real soon. Yeah, she might be thinking I'm high on marijuana or something. But here's the thing, beneath all this sarcasm, which is just coping humor, I must appreciate the Dutch. They came across as hard on surface, but they are deeply kind. They are very honest, they value equality, and well, bicycles more than human. Because at least bicycles doesn't argue back. So which is a good thing. And people say Dutch are direct, as you said, right? I think they are not direct. They are brutally honest with laser precision. Yeah. Someone once told me, oh, so you look tired. And I was like, no, I'm okay. They said, no, your eyes are swollen, you look tired. And I said, no, you look like an expired yogurt. And I said, okay, maybe. So, okay, thank you well, Netherlands. You're efficient, you're direct, you're weird, but somehow you're home. Have a lekker and lazy weekend, guys. And go enjoy your weekend before Monday finds you again. Bye. Over to you, Alex.
Thank you very, very much for that routine. And thank you all, of course, very much for tuning in and watching this at home. We hope you found it a useful and insightful discussion. If the conversation has or hasn't reflected your experience, we'd love to know. So please, if you're an expat, you're a local, do get in touch. Let us know your thoughts and suggestions. You can do so via our social media handles or indeed our email at expaterience@rtvdiscus.nl or web.expaterience.nl. We hope to see you, certainly. We will be doing future episodes. So from me for now, see you next time.